In the early hours of Monday, August 19th, 2024, the superyacht named Bayesian, carrying 10 crew and 12 passengers, sank whilst anchored off the northern coast of Sicily, having encountered a storm and, reportedly, a waterspout. 15 of the 22 aboard were rescued to safety. The 7 remaining passengers, however, despite search and rescue efforts, would not be so lucky.
Six people are missing and 1 person has died after a luxury yacht sank in the early hours of Monday off the coast of Sicily.
The weather was so bad overnight that locals describe it being like nothing they'd ever seen before. Waterspouts, essentially like tornadoes on the water, tore into the coastline. The yacht had been anchored just over there. The sailing mast lights had been twinkling in the night sky, and by morning they were gone. Relentless rain and wind battered the north coast of Sicily in the early hours of Monday, causing widespread damage on the land and proving fatal at sea.
This storm hit really without warning. It was extremely severe. Some saying they'd never seen anything like it.
At around 4 o'clock, the waterspout hit the town. Everyone inside the harbour was scared. Our boat was thrown onto its side. 15 minutes later, we saw a flare in the sea. Once the waterspout had passed, we went out to inspect. All we saw were cushions and the rest of the boat which had sunk. We didn't find any men in the sea.
Initially, there were 7 people missing. They've now confirmed that 1 man has been confirmed dead.
Well, let's rewind to last night. We have a picture taken by somebody on shore of this super yacht. It's 56 metres long, safely anchored out in the bay off this Sicilian port. And until the morning, that's where it stayed. We also have pictures at about 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock local time in Italy, of a massive storm hitting a local town. And you saw that description there of that fishing captain describing what he saw, a waterspout. Now, we can't confirm that, but that's what he said he saw. What we do know is that the Bayesian seems to have sunk at that point. The 22 people on board, that's about 12 guests and 10 crew, tried to escape, and some of them, 15 of them, managed to get onto a nearby yacht and then rescued by Coast Guard. But after that, nobody else emerged from the wreckage of this vessel. It's thought that 7 people are missing, and certainly 1 body bag has been filmed being taken onto the shore. It's worth just pointing out, people who don't know how the Mediterranean operates and these boats operate, this was not moored in the harbour where it would have been protected by the walls, at least from the waves. It was anchored out offshore. That's because these yachts are pretty big and it's hard to get them into a small harbour. What happens generally with super yachts is the guests are ferried into shore to perhaps have dinner on small tenders. So there will be an investigation into whether this sinking could have been prevented, but at the moment this is a rescue operation.
As Coast Guards, firefighters and specialist divers continue to search for the missing, investigators are piecing together the yacht's last voyage. It had sailed from the Sicilian port of Milazzo on the 14th of August, making its way towards Porticello. By the 19th, the vessel was recorded as being anchored just off the coast near the village port. That's where it was when the storm hit, leaving passengers scrambling for safety in the dark.
The gathering on the Bayesian was organised by British businessman and tech giant Mike Lynch, whose family owned the yacht. The plan was to celebrate his acquittal from a court case regarding the selling of his company to Hewlett Packard in 2011. He was found not guilty of numerous charges. In attendance at the celebration were his family and friends, and also his financial and legal advisors. The Bayesian, previously named Salute when it was launched in 2008, was a super yacht, considered a true feat in both engineering and opulence, boasting the second tallest sailing mast in the world with a 10-member crew and rooms for 12 guests. The Times website describes how stainless steel, ebony and leather were employed for the cabins, and how a garage was home to a jet ski, donuts, banana boat, water skis, wakeboards and sea kayaks, which were all on offer to those lucky enough to embark on a voyage. The Times article goes on to say, a former captain of the yacht said the main technical achievement was taming the world's tallest aluminium mast, transforming its dynamic behaviour and stability when sailing and motoring. The yacht had a clean safety record. Both the mast and its rigging were assessed before the summer. A former member of staff for Mike Lynch, the billionaire businessman and owner, said he clearly had a lot of pride in the ship, and adorned the walls of his home in Chelsea, West London, with pictures of the yacht. Those pictures, and a miniature model of the yacht, are now all that remain. Reported on the BBC website, the captain of another yacht anchored nearby said there was a very strong hurricane gust and he had to battle to keep his vessel steady. He claims to have seen Bayesian's mast bend and then snap, according to an Italian newspaper. As a rescue mission was launched, the first body to be recovered will be that of the yacht's chef, Riccardo Thomas, bringing the death toll to 1, with 6 still missing. Rescue efforts continued into Tuesday. Though they found a breach, divers struggled to gain access to the inside of the yacht, obstructed by debris. Those reported to be still missing included Mike Lynch, his teenage daughter Hannah, Jonathan Bloomer of Morgan Stanley and his wife Judy, as well as Clifford Chance lawyer Chris Morvillo and his wife Nida. After 36 hours of rescue efforts, there had been no sign of them. The Italian Coast Guard said, "We will not exclude that they are not inside the boat, but we know that the boat sank quickly. We suppose that the 6 people missing may not have had time to get out." Asked about the likelihood of them being alive, the reply was, "Never say never, but reasonably, the answer should be not."
Now, one of the challenges for investigators is accessing the hull of the yacht. It's still currently on the seabed and largely intact. Search and rescue teams have been diving down since 11:30 on Monday, but this 50-metre depth of the water makes it really difficult. Divers only have 12 minutes searching, and that includes 1 minute accessing the hull and then 1 minute resurfacing. Now, there's a chance those missing may be alive in air pockets, but at such a depth, it is sadly very unlikely.
Speaking to USA Today, Rick Sheamer, a meteorologist who served in the Navy, said the waterspout was an uncommon occurrence. But again, these things happen, especially in warmer water. Hurricanes can form at 80 degrees. This was almost 4 degrees higher than that. Michael Stoller, captain and maritime expert witness, also told USA Today, "When you are anchored and you see weather, you start your engine and put the wind on the bow. You don't let it get on the side." Another key point of safety was the yacht's keel, which acts as a counterbalance to keep the vessel upright. If the keel is lifted, he says, that's going to affect the stability of the vessel, because, obviously, you've now raised the centre of gravity of that vessel. Providing an update on the rescue mission, Marco Tellotto of the Palermo Fire Service Divers Unit stated that the yacht's mast was not in fact broken, but intact. Matthew Shank, chair of the Maritime Search and Rescue Council, told the BBC, "I think, and this is just pure guesswork, but the evidence that we are getting from the divers is that the vessel is basically intact, lying on its side," reportedly. He added that the tragedy was a freak event, that vessels aren't designed to be out sailing in that weather. 65 to 85 miles per hour, that's the top of what a vessel will be out in, and that's with its sails down. They aren't designed to sail through tornadoes or waterspouts. Also speaking to the BBC about how the vessel took on water, possibly from open windows or doors, Sam Jefferson, editor of Sailing Today magazine, said the manner in which the yacht was built, how many watertight bulkheads it had, is vital to understanding what's happened. Superyachts are air-conditioned, so most, if not all of the windows and doors, are closed at night to keep the boat cool. As the rescue mission turned into a recovery mission, 6 people were still missing.
This is a sailing yacht, So we're talking about a ship about 183 feet in length, but what's unique about it is the sail feature. Its mast is over 236 feet in height. That's 50 feet larger than actually the length of the vessel. And since this ship is powered by sail, a windstorm, a waterspout, a kind of sea tornado would have an adverse effect against such a vessel.
And what struck me, too, my colleague Barbie Nadeau reporting earlier, one of the issues that some of the divers had is the fact that the boat is essentially still intact. So being able to get in there safely and to access some of the cabins where we think people may have been trapped, that's actually more difficult because it's intact. Just walk us through why.
Yeah, so this vessel got hit by that tornado at sea, and what probably happened is because of that type of wind, a very hard burst of water and wind at the same time, probably placed the vessel on its beam end, basically pushed it over on its side. And unless all the hatches had been secured and everything had been battened down, the vessel would have flooded. And based on that report, indicates the vessel probably took on a lot of water very quickly and went down to the bottom. And that is nightmaric for the crew on board, being asleep and then all of a sudden waking up to a ship in the room you're in being on its side and flooding with water heading down to the bottom. Bayesian operated in the Mediterranean. It spent its time mainly between Spain and Italy. And while we tend to think of the Mediterranean as, kind of flat and glassy and a beautiful kind of enclosed sea, it can be very rough, and it is susceptible to storms like we saw took place. The ship sailed out of Palermo at the early beginning of the month. It had spent basically a few weeks along the northern shore of Sicily before coming back in, and it's very hard to prepare for a storm like this because you really can't get underway and sail into the wind and waves like a normal storm. This hits you all of a sudden, and the wind can hit you from almost any direction. It's one of the issues on a private yacht. This yacht spends most of its time tied up to a berth or at anchor. It's used for just a few months during the year. A ship's master or the yacht captain would have been cognizant of weather, getting daily and, frequent weather updates. But you're kind of at the whims of the owner, too, where they want to be. Do you want to do a storm evasion, set out to sea to avoid the weather, or do you want to try to ride it out? And unfortunately, they found themselves in a position there where the storm came in, and this would have been a very quick event on board the vessel, from being everything fine to finding yourselves in extremis.
On Wednesday, August 21st, 5 bodies were recovered by divers, leaving just one more to be found.
The Italian Coast Guard has now confirmed to Sky News that the 5 missing people who have been found and brought ashore from that sunken yacht include 59-year-old Mike Lynch, Jonathan Bloomer, his friend, Christopher Morvillo, his lawyer, and their 2 wives, Judy Bloomer and Nada Morvillo. Those names coming to us as being reported by the Italian Coast Guard today. Now, it has now confirmed the worst fears of those who'd been waiting for that news, their friends, their relatives, people that knew them. We knew that British tech billionaire Mike Lynch had been missing since Monday. Those 6 people have been reported missing. 5 bodies were recovered, 1 yesterday and 4 were recovered yesterday. Among them, as I say, British billionaire Mike Lynch, who had been celebrating being cleared of all fraud charges during his trial in the United States in June. He had been celebrating with his wife, with his daughter, who, Hannah, has yet to be found. But we are getting confirmation that Jonathan Bloomer, the chairman of Morgan Stanley International, has been found alongside his wife, Judy. Also found in the last few moments confirmation that Chris Morvillo, too, the lawyer that had represented Mike Lynch during his trial in June in the United States, has also been found alongside Chris Morvillo, his wife, Nada Morvillo. That confirmation coming in the last few moments from the Italian Coast Guard.
The question of the yacht's keel was raised again. As reported by The Telegraph, prosecutors were set to launch an investigation into the Bayesian's keel, which is stated to have been found partially elevated. More light was also shed on the yacht's mast, which was now stated to still be intact by the divers attending the scene.
What happened to the Bayesian, the super yacht, which was supposedly unsinkable? Well, both Italy and the UK are investigating. The Italian authorities might also carry out a criminal investigation, whereas the British team from the Marine Accident Investigation Branch is purely fact-finding. Now, we know the weather turned and the yacht sank quickly, but some, though, are already drawing their own conclusions. The Bayesian's Italian manufacturer has suggested human error rather than a fault with the yacht's design. But investigators will take their time. They're speaking to survivors and eyewitnesses, but the yacht itself is key evidence. Now, although there were reports this huge 70-metre mast, the world's second tallest, snapped, divers say it's now intact. But the yacht's keel, this underwater fin, is also important. The Bayesian had a retracting keel nearly 10 metres long when extended, and its final position will be critical to investigators. Now, other evidence could be the openings of the yacht. Were doors and hatches or even windows left open? And should they have been closed by the crew? Well, for now, the yacht remains on its side on the seabed 50 metres down. Bringing it to the surface won't be easy and could take weeks. Its recovery involving underwater robots, divers and complex floating cranes. Many are describing this as a black swan event, an unpredictable event, very low probability, but high risk. The weather that night was extreme, but did the crew make mistakes? And was the yacht technically sound? That's what investigators must determine.
As the investigation into the tragedy was confirmed by officials, the BBC highlighted various questions that would likely be asked. Was the keel up? And if so, why? The role of the boat's keel will be closely examined by investigators. What about the crew and the measures they took? It is very difficult to say precisely what happened here, said Dr. Paul Scott, Fellow of the Royal Institute of Naval Architects. But it is unlikely that the crew could have reacted in any way to save the yacht in the face of such a sudden and catastrophic weather event. Approached by BBC News, the Italian police confirmed an investigation was ongoing, but no charges have yet been brought. The yacht's captain, James Cutfield, his 8 surviving crew members and passengers have been questioned by the Coast Guard on behalf of prosecutors. In cases like this one, it is common for officials to embark on a broad investigation known as a crime hypothesis that considers a series of possible criminal charges. How did the yacht sink so quickly? And how exactly it occurred? It is stated a doctor who treated survivors said the Bayesian capsized within a few minutes. Vessels like this are not actually designed to stand any period of time at 90 degrees. So, if the vessel found itself at 90 degrees, then you would expect water to get inside, regardless of whether hatches were open or not, though it would obviously speed up the process. Some have speculated that the waterspout flying over the Bayesian could have been popped by the mast, dumping a huge amount of water onto the boat and sinking it rapidly. Witnesses have described seeing a waterspout form during the storm before the sinking of the Bayesian. According to the International Centre for Waterspout Research, there were 18 confirmed waterspouts off the coast of Italy on the 19th of August alone, but the chance of one striking a ship directly, as has been speculated, is still very low. As stated earlier, the Bayesian's keel will also be a point of high interest. On Friday, it was announced that the final body had been recovered by divers. According to the Washington Post, an Italian government official confirmed that it was that of Mike Lynch's daughter, Hannah. From the 22 people who had been aboard the Bayesian superyacht, 7 lost their lives. With all the passengers now accounted for, the families of those lost could now begin to mourn their loved ones. This also means, at the time this video was made, that the recovery phase now shifts from passengers to the yacht itself. Though as stated earlier, that will not be a simple task. It will also enable the investigation to get fully underway and hopefully provide some more answers as to why the Bayesian sank and why it sank so quickly. Was it simply a freak weather event? Maybe it was the mast or keel, or perhaps some other fault with the yacht itself. Perhaps it was human error, or even foul play. They are all possibilities, though for now, the truth still lies with the Bayesian.